Yeah, I mean, I think that what inspired us to start it was kind of the lived experience. Me personally, I had a great time at the company that I was working with. There were just plenty of times when I found, like, I was at the company for, I just hit my 5-year mark. It wasn't until the start of this year that I had my first Black manager, which is, that's hard.
Hey everyone, my name is Rodell Razor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of X Factor Capital, and I'm going to be showing you guys the inside of our new podcast, the Underestimated Podcast. We're going to be interviewing founders from all over the country. We're going to be telling their stories about the obstacles they've had to overcome, the things they've had to do to build their businesses, whether it be through fundraising, acquiring customers, technology, all these different challenges that you have as a founder, and how as an entrepreneur you have to overcome those challenges, and how as an underestimated entrepreneur they have unique challenges to them, how they go through that process. We're going to tell their stories. We're going to highlight some of their businesses. Hopefully you guys can see some of their great products, some of their great services, and for those of you that are interested in entrepreneurship, this podcast is for you, because it's going to inspire you to go beyond that threshold of where you want to quit, to go through that wall. And these stories are absolutely incredible. So you guys stay tuned. Come along. All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is episode 2 of the Underestimated Podcast. Today I am joined with Toby Egbuna with Chezie. Toby, thank you so much for joining the show. We're excited to have you and hear more about your story. Thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate y'all having me.
Of course. So let's dive right into it, man. I want to know more. Tell people a little bit about Chezie, the company, what you do, the problem you solve, and how you even got to, launching a company from your consulting background to becoming a startup founder. Tell me a little bit about that journey and what your company does, man.
Yeah. So my sister and I launched a company together in June of 2020. We are first-gen Nigerian immigrants. So Chezie is actually the Igbo word for reflect. We think that, job seekers need to do some self-reflection and figure out what it is that they want out of a company. But companies need to do some reflection and figure out if the work that they're doing for DEI is, having the impact that they want it to have. We have gone through a couple iterations of the company. We first launched kind of as a glass door, but for minorities. And we definitely saw some success and some validation from that from job seekers, right? Like, it's something that, you tell people and they immediately click, they immediately get it. But we're a business, and our business model was initially to help companies with diversity recruiting, because that was a problem that they were having. And obviously a lot of companies were looking for that sort of thing. But the issue was there were a lot of other companies offering services for diversity recruiting. And it was just, especially last June with all the events around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and, just kind of like the social uprising that we had, it was just such a competitive market for us that we had to take a step back a couple months ago to think about what else that companies were doing for DEI that maybe they were struggling with, that we could maybe fill in the gap with. And we kind of identified these groups of underrepresented people or communities for underrepresented people, women, Black people, people with disabilities, et cetera, often called employee resource groups, right, that companies have. Yeah. And a lot of times these ERGs are generally like the centerpiece of a company's DEI programming, right? They support recruiting and mentorship and training, but also like product development and sales and everything else. But we did some digging around. A friend of mine from a pretty big like fitness tech company reached out and asked if we had any kind of products around helping companies manage their ERGs and see who's in what group. And I was like, we don't, but maybe I can spin something up. So I spun something up in no code. I showed it to her. She was like, I actually spun something up in like Google Data Studio. It wasn't even no code. It was like even more elementary than that. And I showed it to her and she's like, this is exactly what we need. And then, that was kind of a light bulb moment for us. We were like, well, this is a company with like 3,000 people. We were like, if they need it, chances are there's a bunch of other companies out there that are having these same kind of problems. And, I reached out to other contacts that I had in the DEI space, because at this point, we had probably 80, 90, 100 conversations with people from different companies of different sizes. And I just reached back out to folks and I was like, how are y'all managing your ERGs right now? How do you know who's in what group? How does someone sign up for an ERG when they just joined the company? So questions like that. And we found out that a lot of companies didn't really have a system for this, right? And I think if ERGs are, the ultimate goal for them is generally to retain your talent, but it's really hard to achieve that goal if you don't know who's in what group. And you don't know what kind of events and programming strategies are working better for the people that they're intended to serve. So we've kind of shifted our focus now to offering companies and employee resource group management software that really is intended to solve all the problems that I just touched on. And we think that we're definitely onto something. And we feel good about it, mainly because, it's still something that identifies with our initial mission, which was to kind of help people that look like us, but also people from other underrepresented communities kind of find careers that they love. We're just taking a different approach to it now, where we want to help you feel like you belong in a job you have, rather than necessarily like help you find a new job at a different company. And this is also something, you know, to be totally transparent, we feel like would be a lot more financially rewarding for us as a company as well. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, no, most large companies have ERGs or employee resource groups, and they are designed to really try to create a more inclusive environment and create, you know, smaller subsets within their culture where people feel more safe, more included, more involved into the greater community of a large company. And so, you know, Chezie really solving that problem of really ERG management and facilitation of those efforts, because you and I both know a lot of these DEI officers, they may not necessarily come from, you know, the tech or leadership, or, you know, their way to DEI is, there's no clear pathway to become an officer of DEI. So to have those project management tools, you know, software tools, things like that, like that's a problem that you guys solve. And so I'm interested, I got a couple questions. One of them is around founding a business with your sister. I got 4 little sisters, and we do a lot of stuff together. We have never worked together. And so I'm interested to know what that's like, running a business with your sister. I mean, I'm sure she's capable and talented, but tell me some of the dynamics that go into that, both good and maybe some areas where you guys can experience some growth.
Yeah. I think, you know, I mean, admittedly, I don't think either of us knew what we were getting into when we first jumped into this. It was just kind of like, we had the idea concurrently, and we were like, I was like, do you want to work on this? And then she was like, yeah, do you want to work on this? And I was like, yeah. So we just did. We just jumped into it. And I think we've been working on Chezie. We've gone through even a different business name, but we've been working on it for about 2 years now total. But this like fresh idea of it for about a year now. But overall, it's been great. It has been great. I think that it helps us that we are in 2 different cities, so we're not like looking at each other all the time. We've also been pretty good about like delegating responsibilities. So she basically handles anything, marketing, brand, anything like that. All of our social media, all that stuff. I've been in charge of a lot of like the product development, the sales, and then any like, you know, ad hoc stuff that we got to do, legal stuff like that. And I think that, you know, at first, we've definitely learned more about each other since we started working on this company. I think that she's learned that I'm very like type A, like I don't want to say glass half empty, but I'm always telling her like we need to be doing better, we need to be pushing harder, stuff like that. And she's very much, you know, let's look back at like all the things that we've accomplished and how far we've come, and like appreciate that, right? And I think you need a combination of, you need both of that. You definitely do. And I think now that I've always been like a visionary and thinking about how big this could be. And I think that she would admit this too, but like, you know, at first she was just kind of like working on this as something that she thought would be cool. Right. And then after some time, she was like, she started to catch on to the vision. It became a reality to her as well that, you know, this could be something that we quit our full-time jobs for. We build a team around, right? Stuff like that. And it's really interesting now to see her grow into her role as CMO and really like, just hit me with new ideas for like sales initiatives and marketing plans and community launches and all these different things that we can be doing. It's really cool to see her, you know, kind of grow that way. So overall, it's been wonderful. I think that, you know, we're just getting started. I don't think there's anyone I'd rather start this kind of company with. That's great. And obviously, you know, we butt heads and, you know, we're siblings, right? So, you know, and like you just said, we used to fight all the time as kids, but it helps that we're not, like I said, it helps that we're not physically together. We can like kind of tap on each other's shoulders for emotional or business support whenever we need to. But, you know, so far so good.
That's great, man. And how do your parents feel about it? I know Nigerian families are usually pretty tight already. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about how your parents feel about that.
Our parents have been nothing but supportive from the very beginning. I think that it's interesting, the kind of immigrant dynamic. There was very much when I think when we first moved here, they wanted us to, you know, be traditional Nigerian kids and go to good schools, get traditional jobs in like business law or like medicine or whatever.
Yep.
And we did actually. I went to consulting. My sister went into tech sales. So we kind of went into what the traditional roles are, and now we're kind of going off the beaten path with this new business venture. I just quit my full-time job, and I think my parents were a little like, like it's maybe a little too soon. Let's get some more money in the bank for the business, but they're supportive. I think they know what we're trying to do. They know how hard we're working. And my dad is like a business head, so I can call on him and say like, cool. How do I do this, financial projections, whatever. And my mom is just very much like, I'm praying for you. I want you all to succeed, that sort of thing. So she's,
that's cool.
Both of them have our backs for sure.
That's dope, man. And I think that's really cool that you guys have their support. Obviously, the parents have reservations because they just want their kids to be successful and whatever that they do. And entrepreneurship is so flighty, right? There's no guarantees in anything in life, but entrepreneurship is definitely tough, and being first generation, things like that. I think it comes with its own unique challenges. What is it like being an entrepreneur in the DEI space? I think, I've done, as you know, our background for X Factor, we were DEI consultants, speakers, communicators, and then we launched into, launching a venture fund that's diversity and equity focused. So I know some of the challenges of penetrating this space of, corporate bureaucracy and trying to get real conversations, real change. I'm really interested to hear like what's been your experience trying to penetrate these big organizations, launching a company that's profit focused, but also mission focused. Like, tell me some of those challenges that you guys have.
Yeah, honestly, I think the biggest, challenge is convincing people that there is a legitimate market here, right? A lot of people kind of see as a trend, when in reality, like there's all these stats about in X number of years, the U.S. is going to be more minority than it is non-minority.
Yeah,
right?
I saw it was like 20 years from now. Like it's going to be more. It's like not that far. Yeah,
I feel like it's even sooner than that. And there's like a 55% uptick in DEI focused job postings in August last year. I'm sure that number will be up even higher. Companies are spending, we estimate, there's no like strict number about this, and I'll kind of get into that later, but we estimate companies are spending anywhere like around 40 billion on DEI altogether every year. And that number is probably even higher now.
Wow.
And we're at the point now where we had it's been a while since I've had a sales call and somebody's been like, we don't have budget. You know what I mean? It's like the money's there.
Interesting. Yeah.
From business side. You know what I mean? The money is there for business side. It's just kind of, which is good for us. We're just kind of in a position now where it's like, let's really make the case and tell them that this is something that they need to empower their DEI programs.
Got it.
I think the biggest challenge, but also opportunity for us is, if you're selling like a sales product, right? It's very easy for you to say like, we'll give you 100 more leads, right? Like that's a direct, very obvious, yes, we should use this product because we want 100 leads, right?
Yep.
But with us, like ultimately we believe that if you have employee resource groups, somebody that's involved in a well-run employee resource group will be more likely to stay at your company than somebody that is not, right?
Yep.
And we believe that, but we don't have the data to say, like we would be able to say in a year from now, like somebody that's in an ERG is 25% more likely to stay at your company than somebody is not. Because then that's an irrefutable fact.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the challenge for us is just like the lack of data available out there for us to actually make these kind of cases. But that's also an opportunity because we can be the source of that data, right?
Yes.
If we can really, really blow this thing up, get a couple companies on it, track the way that their employees are moving through their ERGs, and start to make that case, it becomes one, much easier for us to sell, but two, much easier for people to start believing that this DEI thing is real. Like it literally works. Like everyone's pointing to the same McKinsey study from 10 years ago that companies are X% more likely, more profitable if they like have diverse teams. But everybody's heard that already. Like there's an opportunity to put new data and new reports out there, and that's what we're trying to do, is specifically around employee resource groups.
Well, and I think that's something that you and I both know, and anybody who's listening, they know that the DEI category has been in this kind of soft and fluffy category, right? It hasn't been in the revenue driving categories. It hasn't yet penetrated. Like, no, it's very real. Just like you want to generate leads, you want to retain employees, you want people to be happy. And I think with even the rise, not only with the social movement, but with COVID and people wanting to work from home, like employee happiness is I think it's the number one priority for big companies right now, where before it was pay scale, before it was benefit package, before it was, career trajectory. But now it's like, peace and happiness and togetherness and inclusiveness, like these things that were soft and fluffy have become very real. They've become a bit more concrete. And, you know, I think, like you said, the data is going to come, whether you're the data provider or, you know, there's all these companies that are now launching into this similar category to find out like I think this is something that is so necessary. And you and I talked about this before, but the transparency that's going to be required for companies at the diversity levels, at different levels of leadership. And so what do you see the future? Obviously, you know, you have a thesis that your company is built on, but what do you see the future of large institutions, let's call it 500 employees or more? What do you see the future of transparency in recruiting, retention, promotion, pay? Like, what do you see the future is going to look like?
I think this is something we're really excited about, but the future is in transparency. I think a lot of times now, if I, you know, I'm obviously not looking for a new role, but, you know, we write content and we try to advise people on what it is that they should be looking for out of an inclusive employer. And one of the biggest things I point out to people is like, if you go to their about page or their careers page and you control F diversity and they don't say a word about it, you know, maybe you might want to look elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? Yep. I think that companies that are really serious about this will talk about what they're doing well, but also what they're doing poorly, and allow the people that they're recruiting, specifically the people from underrepresented communities, a bit of insight into genuinely what it's going to be like to work there. Because obviously people are looking for, you know, inclusive workplaces, but they're looking at other things as well. And it's better, especially for these people from underrepresented communities, that both parties like save time and say like, this is a genuine look into what it's going to be like to work here. We think a big opportunity with that is with these ERGs, right? Right now, ERGs are really only available and accessible if you already work at a company. But what if you were a job seeker and you had access to the Black ERG at, you know, company ABC before you actually got that offer letter in front of you, and you can kind of like find your tribe there before you decided to go work there. That's almost
like a college visit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perfect. And I think that's something that we were just like ecstatic about the opportunity to do. It's definitely down the road. It's down the road for us, but this broader idea of like community and helping people find belonging at the companies they already work for, but also for the companies that they're applying to and looking into, something we're excited about. So I think that's just the trend, especially, and I think it's starting even earlier, right? Like we're talking to companies with 250 people that have ERGs, right? Yeah. With 50 people that are already reaching out saying like, how do we get on the ball when it comes to diversity recruiting? I think the earlier you start, the better. We're starting to see that trend, which is, you know, encouraging.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the demand, whether it be from Capitol Hill or wherever it's coming from, I think there's definitely a demand that people are under and a pressure that they're under to recruit, to be more equitable, even if it's forced, if it's not out of good heart or good business. They're just like, I have to do this. I have to meet this checkbox, and we're all aware of those intentions. So share with me, I'm interested to know your perspective. If I'm an executive of a large company, I'm a white male. Yeah. I don't match any of the underrepresented categories, but I genuinely care, but I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. What advice would you give? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm interested to know what would be your feedback if I go, man, like I just don't know where to start. I don't know how to make this more inclusive. Like, yes, my entire staff is white, but this is because we all went to school together or we started this company together. Like, I didn't intentionally make a racist environment or a non-inclusive environment. How do I go about change?
I always recommend people start kind of work backwards. So it's easier to figure out. It's easier to figure out what to do if you kind of got the pulse of your employees as it is. So if you're in a company of 100 people, chances are you have at least a handful of people that don't fit that white male, you know, Ivy League background. Talk to them, figure out, learn everything about their experience, right? From recruiting, from the application, all the way into like promotion discussions to their relationships with the managers. Make it candid, make it honest, like make it, you know, to where they feel comfortable being 100% real with you. Figure out what trends you're hearing from those conversations, and then chances are, if you're that small of a company, you probably don't have anyone on your team that's like exclusively focused on DEI. At that point, maybe that's when you bring in a third party, a consultant, something like that. There's plenty of DEI consultancies out there. Tell them the research that you've already done. Tell them the problems that you're already having, and then work with them to kind of identify solutions to them. The one thing I always say though is that this is not a short-term play, right? If you want to be more equitable, it's not gonna happen overnight. Especially if you want to get more like diversity in terms of straight up numbers to your company, you're not about to quadruple the number of Black people you have in your company in a year. That's probably just not going to happen.
Right.
So just be aware of that. Know that this is a long-term play, but it's like the earlier you start, the better. And I talked about transparency. I always tell people, it doesn't matter when you start on the journey as long as you start, right? And if the more transparent you are with saying like, listen, for the first couple of years of our company, we were just focused on growth and we were hiring the people that we had in our network, and a lot of those people look like us. And now we're being very intentional about recruiting for people that come from these different backgrounds. And we're doing X, Y, Z to solve this kind of DEI problem that we have. We brought in this consultant and we, implementing this strategy. We're nowhere where we want to be, but we're getting there, right? Yeah. Like if you tell a candidate that, then it's like, okay, I mean, I probably, because the candidate probably already knew that.
Right. But they wanted to hear you say it.
Be accountable. Yep. Exactly. For you to acknowledge it and be accountable about it, I think it puts you in a good light as a CEO and as, a company as a whole, and kind of like at least makes you a little bit more enticing for somebody that's looking at working in a company, but maybe doesn't see a whole lot of people that work there that look or come from the same background as them.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. And I think there is a lot of well-meaning executives, and and what I'm finding, in just the discussions that I'm having, and we talk to, different institutions, department heads, things like that, where sometimes you can feel that they want to just go, I don't want to deal with it. And so, because they're so afraid of doing something wrong. And I think, like what you said, there's no silver bullet. Like there's nothing that's going to be like, oh, I solved all my DEI problems. Everyone feels inclusive. Everyone feels like there is no utopia, but to strive to a more inclusive environment. It's just so important to people to see your authentic effort, to see that you care. And that, there's going to be landmines in the journey of, building an inclusive environment. You're going to offend, there's going to be people that don't feel included, there's going to be people that don't get promoted, and you're going to make mistakes. Just understanding that those landmines are there. And that what do you do when you step on them? How do you rectify? How do you make the situation whole and complete again? Because most of it is out of good intent. And people that care and want to make change within their community, and they're willing to invest, and they understand that it's not going to be solved overnight. It's not going to be one consultant. Yeah. It's not going to be one course or one speaker. It's not going to be one hire. It's not going to be one program. Like it literally has to be a part of the culture. And I think that's something that's really important. So let's go back to the beginning of your guys' journey. Like, I know that you guys launched this business, the plight of, a lot of social unrest, across the country. But what's inspired you to, step into this space, obviously short term, and then what's keeping you in it? Even the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, walking away from a full-time career. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what inspired us to start it was kind of the lived experience. Me personally, I had a great time at the company that I was working with. Obviously, there were a couple of times when I was like, this maybe isn't it for me. But overall, I felt very satisfied with my experience there. And I think my sister did too. But, there were just plenty of times when I found, like, I was at the company I just hit my 5-year mark. It wasn't until the start of this year that I had my first Black manager, which is, that's hard. That's kind of hard to do with a big company that, for it to take that long. And we were just like, this is a problem that a lot of people face, is just feeling like they're the only person in the workplace, that they don't necessarily belong there. We just wanted to help people find workplaces where they belong. And that was like the initial problem, right? How do we help people find these workplaces? And then I had started looking for a new job 2 years ago because I was trying to get into DEI specifically. And I found this job at this tech company, and I didn't have anyone in my network that worked at the company. So I went on my LinkedIn and I was just like searching through people that worked there to see if I could talk to them. And then I was like, this is kind of like I didn't want to go to Glassdoor because Glassdoor is too generic. And I was like, what if there was a Glassdoor but for people that look like us, right? Yep. And I went to my sister with that idea, and she agreed, and we just like, boom, let's do that. Wow. And so I think, again, we've gone through a couple of iterations, and now we're a little bit more focused on employee resource groups. But I think that was kind of the spark for us in terms of wanting to start it, is just like the lived experience, wanting to help people that came from other underrepresented communities. I think what's keeping us around is that same principle. Yeah. I've been thinking this, especially the last 6 months. I can't imagine being a founder and working on something that you're not passionate about, because it's hard. It's hard. The amount, like, I feel like every day something's breaking. Every day I have to like put on a different hat that I've never worn before. You know what I mean? The hat doesn't fit. It's the wrong color. It's everything. And I can't imagine going through all this stress, feeling like I need to be working 24/7 for something that I wasn't super absolutely passionate about. And I am in this case. So like, I feel pretty good about putting in extra hours or reading articles to learn up on how to do something, whatever. So I think that's what's keeping us going, is that, we know at the end of the day what it is that we're shooting for. We're shooting to be, we always say, like, there's Salesforce for sales, there's HubSpot for marketing, there's Workday for HR, whatever. There's no company like that for DEI. And DEI really is this booming industry. There should be, or there will be at some point. So why not Chezie? That's kind of like the business vision that we have for the company. But I think if we achieve that business vision, that means that we've helped hundreds of thousands, millions of people that look like me, or people, or women, or people from the LGBTQ plus community, or people from any underrepresented community find these workplaces where they belong. So that's kind of like the social impact thing that's pushing us as well. So I think it's a combination of those two, is like the potential business impact and the social impact.
No, man, I think that's really, really powerful, talking about, and I was talking to my wife about that this morning, and like, I can't imagine if I had to wake up every single day and be a founder of a company, not just do something you don't like, but run a company, try to launch a company of something that you just had no passion in, because passion is what you drink from the cup of passion when you run out of gas. Right. And so that's I really appreciate you sharing that. So, you're a ball player, and you played a little bit of hoop. I found that out about you. I did not know that when you posted it, obviously played at UNC. And so tell me a little bit about your, being a college athlete, playing basketball at a pretty high level, and how those transferable skills of being an athlete, waking up early, training, things like that. How are those skills transferable to being a founder?
Yeah. Saying a college athlete is probably a little bit of a stretch. I walked on to my senior year, so I got 1 year under my.
Hey man, you played a lot further than most of us, especially in hoop. That's a tough sport, man. They only keep a few.
It's 15 on the roster. That's true.
Yeah.
No, I mean even if Chezie blew up and we went public, I might still say that making the basketball team is my proudest accomplishment. I'm not even lying to you. I think having grown up in North Carolina, I feel like everyone is just a fan of one of the two Blues. Everyone wants to play basketball at Carolina, at Duke, at, maybe Wake or NC State or whatever. But to be one of like 550 people ever to have played at that school with Michael Jordan and Vince Carter and Hansborough and all these other like great names is something I still think about all the time. Yeah. The experience was incredible. Obviously, like, it was 2016. So the end result, it was good up until like the last 4.7 seconds of the season. But, it was an awesome experience to play under Coach Williams, to play in the Dean Dome, to, get on the floor and even I never scored, but just even to get a chance to like put some shots up in games was crazy. But I think I've taken a lot from it. I think one big thing that I always say is like, so I played 2 years of JV before I played my senior year. Yep. Sophomore, junior year. I played under Hubert Davis, who's just named like the current head coach. And I'll never forget one day in practice, he just like stopped because we weren't doing well defensively. He was just like, listen, if you guard your man and you guard your man and all 5 people on y'all on defense guard their individual person, you don't need to help. Like, we'll be good. The other team is going to struggle to score. We'll be fine. Right. And that's a basketball analogy, but it's also kind of he was just basically saying, like, guard the man in front of you. And that's a basketball analogy, but it's an analogy, I think, for society as well, right? Not everybody can be the activist, but also like the donator, but also the content creator. But you know what I mean? Like, you can't do everything, right? But if we just kind of pick the thing that we can do to contribute to like the greater good, we'll be fine. Right. Yep. And Dumebie we think that Chezie is kind of our contribution to the greater good. And maybe there's other things that we can kind of help out with. But you, Riddell, maybe it's venture, right? Like giving money to these people that haven't had access to it before. For other people, it's making content. For other people, it's writing books. For other people, it's giving speeches, right? If we each kind of focus on that individual thing and find what it is that we can do to contribute to the cause, AKA guard the man in front of us, we'll be good. So that's my favorite line. I love to refer to that from Coach Davis. He probably doesn't even know I use that all the time, but I do. I hope he keeps saying it. He probably doesn't realize that he dropped that gem, but it was fire.
That is incredibly powerful because the simplicity of it, right, is like, 100 points gets scored in a basketball game, but if everyone was guarding their man, like it would be 0, right? Like we'd be just fine. So it's so simple, and it's. I wrote a blog. It was called "Man Your Post," and how each of us can be a change in the matter if we just man our post, right? If you're an educator, if you're an activist, if you're a police officer, if you're a mom, if you're raising kids in this world, how do you man your post, right? Or guard your man. I love that. That's really good, man. I appreciate you sharing that. That's rich. So before I let you go, man, I ask everyone. Obviously, you are a Black man in America as a founder. And I called this podcast Underestimated intentionally because, there's underrepresented and there's all these different acronyms that get thrown with people of color, whatever it may be. I just see it as someone like yourself as a basketball player. You said the years of JV, making the roster. So being underestimated both in your, personal life, your career, is there a chip on your shoulder? Is there a level of pride because of heritage? Talk to me a little bit about being underestimated and how much pride you take in the work that you do and the results that you put out in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that, having played basketball, I'm really only competitive about the things that I care about, which is why I only played basketball. I never played any other sports because I never really cared enough to play soccer or football just because I wasn't really that good at them, and therefore I wasn't competitive about them. With Chezie, though, I'm super competitive. And I think about all the applications that we put in to accelerators, to pitch competitions, where we get unfortunately, we don't have space for you this year, apply next year, that sort of thing. I just think about it for when we get to that point where people are reaching out to us, trying to give us money or whatever. I'm just thinking back to those initial. Anyway, so I say all that to say, I definitely keep a chip on my shoulder. My sister and I, we just basically just hashtag phrase. I don't even know if you can see it on my phone. If I open it up, you can't. But I have this background on my phone and my laptop. It just says win. We just think that we've been, I guess, I don't want to say counted out because we've definitely had opportunities and people around us that have supported us. But, our parents moved to this country and we had very little, I think, just knowledge of how things worked. We had to figure everything out ourselves. And despite that, we got into good schools like we wanted to. We both ended up playing college basketball. We both got into the good jobs that we wanted to. And now we kind of set our sights on Chezie. And I want everybody listening to this podcast to know that we're going to be the people that win this market. And I guess that does stem us kind of pushing that phrase does stem from a bit of a chip on our shoulders. And it's not even necessarily from people telling us that we'll never be able to do it, but any kind of, you kind of got to find that fire for those nights that you just start feeling it. And I can pull up the last accelerator that we applied to that we didn't get into for whatever reason, because we thought the market was too small or whatever. And I'm just, I can use that as fuel for us pushing ourselves to go even further.
No, man, that's really, really good. I'm listening to you, and I remember that's how we met, was a pitch competition that X Factor was hosting with Entre.
So we got into that one. Shout out to y'all. We did get into that
of course. We had love for y'all, man. And you guys were one of the finalists. You guys won some money, and we definitely saw what you've before someone else validated with a $50,000 check. X Factor was like, yo, that's a good idea. And so it's really cool to see what you've been able to build. And like you said, having that chip on your shoulder, not from a space of resentment, but I think it goes back to Chezie. It goes back to reflecting, right? You reflect on the no's, the not right now's, the it's not good enough, whatever. You reflect on them and say, all right, well, I'm not only out to prove you wrong, but that's going to happen along the way, right? And so, and I saw, I think exactly. And so I saw the tweet and it said, and I know we got to run here. We're wrapping up on time, but I saw it said. Someone said, "Oh man, we can't participate in the seed round, but we'll see you in Series A." And he was like, "Nah, I'll see you guys at NASDAQ." And so that stuck with, because we're all getting told no every single day. Someone's like, "Oh, you're too early," blah blah blah, more validation, whatever. So give some advice to an entrepreneur, whether it's you 3 years ago before you started the company, or someone out there who wants to go start a company. What advice would you give? What nugget of advice would you give in your journey, what you've gathered?
I always tell people just start. I say that every time I get that question, I tell them just start. And it doesn't have to be with I think something that we've been really, really good about is starting small. So like, I mean, Chezie, when it used to be Diversify, now it's Chezie, but we started with a Wix. No, even before that, we started with a little mock-up on mockups.com, MOQUPS.com. And they let you do just a little drag. It's like basically a PowerPoint, fancy PowerPoint. And we showed people, and we were like, what do you think of this? We asked them a bunch of questions. And then from there, we made it a Wix site, like, drag and drop, no functionality, no filtering, no nothing. Super, super basic. And we launched that, and we were on that we were probably on that for like 9 months. And then we went onto a Webflow site. And now we are on Bubble, so it's a little bit fancier, but it still hasn't been, it's been iterations. It's been steps up until it's like where we are right now. So if you have an idea, you can start with a blog. If you have an idea for like an app, you can start with a blog to see if people are interested in the topic. If you have an idea for a podcast, maybe you start with like TikTok videos. You know what I mean? Like especially now, there's so many between no code and TikTok and social media and Canva and all these different tools out there for you to like produce content. I don't want to say easy because that, maybe disrespects a couple people, but it's easier than ever to get started, right? So that's always my word of advice. It's like, find the smallest thing you can do. Everybody always talks about MVPs and stuff like that. Find the smallest thing you can do to get started. Start getting people to be paying attention to you, and just start. That's what I say every time. Just start.
Just start, man, and guard your man. I love it, man. That's good. That's good game, man. I appreciate you, chiming in and sharing your wisdom and all the things that you've gone through and building the business, building with your sister, building, coming from where your family come from, in Nigeria, and everything that you've built already to this point, man. It's incredibly impressive. X Factor's cheering for you. I'm cheering for you. You definitely have. You've inspired me, and I'm sure you've inspired our listeners. So I just wanted to say thank you for jumping in, man. You're episode 2. We'll make sure that, we share this with the world, man. So thank you for what you're building with Chezie, and thank you for who you are in the world, man.
Of course, man. I appreciate y'all having me. And, reach out anytime. Glad to come back.
Of course, man. All right, man. Take care.